Good afternoon. Welcome to the Committee of Parent and Community Engagement, March 8th, 2022 meeting. Madam Secretary, can you please call the roll?
Director Carr?
Here.
Director Leonard?
Here.
Director O'Halloran?
Here.
Director Simpson?
Here.
And Chair Taylor?
In attendance.
We have 5 present.
At this time, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our listening audience.
Madam Chair, we also have President Peterson joining the committee tonight.
Thank you, President Peterson. We like having you on.
Buenas tardes. Esta junta escolar se transmitirá en español para aquellas personas que lo necesiten. Para escuchar esta junta en español, por favor marque el número 312-626-6799. Repito, para escuchar esta junta en español, marque el 312-626-6799 y ponga el número de identificación o código que es 608-130-5362. Repito, el número de identificación o código para esta junta es el 608-130-5362. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Everyone else, make sure your microphones are muted.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Pursuant to Board Rule 1.06, this meeting is being conducted virtually. Board members may be participating in person from the Central Service Building. In order to allow as much public participation as possible, this meeting is being broadcast via live stream on the NPS website and on the NPS YouTube screen. These links in which may be found on the NPS website on the broadcast page. For each item of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. Individuals who wish to speak on tonight's items were required to register in advance. I ask those who are waiting to speak to remain on the platform until you are called upon to speak. Just as a reminder, Robert Rules of Order dictates that all comments should be directed towards the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests are to be directed towards the chair, who will then determine the most efficient way to address them. All speakers are asked to state their name and spell their last name before proceeding with their comments. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and 15 seconds to speak. After a speaker's time is up, they may continue to follow the meeting at one of the broadcast options mentioned previously. To ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind, including inappropriate language, will not be tolerated. The chair reserves the right to remove anyone engaging in such behavior from the platform. Those removed from the platform may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, he or she will not be allowed to rejoin the platform. Written testimony may be submitted to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53201, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@Milwaukee, spell all the way out, .k12.wi.us. Also, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the meetings agenda and meetings page on the NPS website and choosing online agenda items. Madam Secretary, what is the first order of business?
Item number 1 is a report with possible action on family and community engagement. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Thank you. Administration, do you guys have any comments on this item?
Yes, Chair Taylor and members of the committee. Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. The item before you on this evening's agenda is our quarterly report regarding family and community engagement. Christy Stone and Mr. Dale Hall will provide an overview of our progress and guide us through the presentation. Upon completion of the presentation, we'll be more than happy to entertain any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Good evening, Chair Taylor, members of the committee. My name is Darrell Hall, and I am the Family and Community Engagement Specialist with the Department of Strategic Partnership and Customer Service. Co-presenting with me this evening is Tammy Pbis, Parent Coordinator of Bruce Elementary. I am excited to have the opportunity to update the committee on activities around family engagement. As the district focuses on the 5 priorities for success, family engagement is a critical component across all 5. There's alignment with the develop our staff and strengthen communication and collaboration priorities. So this evening, during our presentation, we will discuss the department's efforts relative to family and community engagement. We will cover the various ways we are supporting the parent coordinator, provide you with some highlights of family engagement activities this year, introduce the creation of the family collaboration cohort. Then I will turn it over to Ms. Pbis, who will share how family engagement has improved at her school. Lastly, we will discuss our next steps moving forward. Our department strives to facilitate effective professional development to parent coordinators and provide them with timely support to sustain healthy relationships with family over time. As you may remember from a previous report, we have professional development each month for the parent coordinator. They are planned by the family and community engagement team with assistance from a group of parent coordinators who will serve as advisors to ensure that the learning and topic are relevant. We have collaborated with various partners from the community to develop and to offer development and resources. For example, the Milwaukee Public Library, the Library Now program, Safe and Sound Milwaukee, the Department of Workforce Development, and other community-based organizations and agencies. We have also worked with several departments in the district to provide update and development to parent coordinator, student services, bilingual multicultural education, specialized services, and others. So speaking of professional development, we have added additional development hours for the parent coordinators to engage families better. To ensure all the parent coordinators take advantage of the extra support, the family engagement team offers virtual hours, office hours, as well as in-person support to the parent coordinators. So in terms of group support, they are broken into regions, meaning the scheduled times are held based on the geographical area or location of the school. A key responsibility for parent coordinators is to create an environment that makes parents and families feel comfortable participating in school activities. It can be challenging because parent coordinators must develop creative ways to draw busy families to events and activities. From the start of the school year to January 2022, over 547 family engagement activities have been reported across schools. The activities include back to school events, family game and fun night, Thanksgiving Day food giveaways, winter coat and boot giveaways, town hall meetings, literacy and math night, just to name a few. A highlight is attendance for the annual Title I parent family meeting. Federal guidelines requires each school to hold an annual meeting to explain and discuss with families the programs and requirements, and including the rights of families to be involved. Across the district, over 10,000 families attended the meetings at their school. So the final item on this slide is a comment from parent coordinators and what they are saying about supporting schools and families. We asked them to reflect on the learning and connections they made this year thus far. Here's a comment from a parent coordinator. I appreciated learning about how we can engage our ESL family, and I am excited to make our school a more inclusive and welcoming place for all of our families. Another parent coordinator said, I've been able to support my families better because of the professional development that's offered by the family engagement staff. I'm learning new things and teaching my parents what I've learned, and families have been attending more because the activities are fun, engaging, reported another parent coordinator. Indeed, we want to create a foundation for successful engagement across all schools moving forward. Reaching this goal requires a collaborative approach. Our greatest success has been when we are working together. In May 2021, we led focus groups of parent coordinators and asked them, how can our department better support their development? The feedback was that they wanted more opportunities to learn and collaborate with their peers in other schools. This year, we piloted a new initiative, Family Collaboration Cohort. The purpose is so parent coordinators can work together across schools to increase family engagement across the district. The parent coordinators will collaborate and plan family meetings, workshops, activities, etc. Parent coordinators learn how to conduct an engaging meeting and facilitate virtual icebreakers, games, activities, and relationship and trust building exercises for families. The cohort has 4 core principles that guide this work, and is listed on this slide, and I read it. The first is to engage parent coordinators in the supported peer-based learning experience. Parent coordinators who participated in the program work with others and learn their subject and simultaneously learn how to teach each other. They were taught practical skills and facilitated activities and games utilizing the skills learned at their school. More important, parent coordinators were exposed to strategies and best practices used at other schools. They observed family engagement in action and learned how unique each school's approach could be and was when engaging their family. Lastly, we emphasized the connection between family engagement and student achievement by cultivating partnership and that have mutually beneficial relationships. So how does this work? The parent coordinators who took part committed to 4 hours learning how to engage their family with virtual activities in the essential role of developing true family-school collaboration. The parent coordinators were placed in small groups of 6 cohorts of 2. Each cohort visit a different school to observe family engagement practices. Again, in collaboration with their colleagues, parent coordinators have learned and honed skills necessary to implement practices at their respective schools. In December and again in January, parent coordinators had an opportunity to showcase their talent at the parent coordinator monthly meeting. At the end of the school year, we will be discussing and providing feedback to each of the cohorts necessary for continuous growth. So before I introduce Ms. Pbis, who will share how family engagement has improved at her school, I want to add that this approach is intentional about building relationship with family and strengthening the home and school connection. So we often implement programming and have not taken the time to get to know our family. This pilot has been an effective strategy to follow up with families with the activities to get the family's input and feedback after each activity. With that, I invited Ms. Pbis to share her experiences in implementing programming and being a part of the cohort. She is a new parent coordinator and a member of the cohort. And after Ms. Pbis speaks, I would come back and talk about our next step. Ms. Pbis.
Good evening, Chair Taylor and members of the committee. My name is Tammy Pbis. I am the proud parent coordinator at W.G. Bruce Elementary School. Bruce Elementary School is a K-3 through 5th grade traditional school. This is my first year as a parent coordinator, but I've worked for MPS my entire life. I started as a teenager working through the rec program, trying different positions, and I've come to find this position. This position helps me to build and maintain strong relationship with the families we serve and the community in which we are a part of. So I'm here to stay. I'm excited every day that I get to assist and connect families with our community members and more. One of the main reasons I chose to accept the position of a parent coordinator is because I know how hard it is in our communities to get parent involvement. With my skill set as a daycare operator, I felt like I can do a little bit more, and I'm doing so. I'm intrigued by how much support I am able to receive from our FACE team. My regional and her partners are awesome. We have support meetings weekly. We have our very own virtual community for support. Not to mention the support, but we have a PC playbook created just for us. This book will help guide any parent coordinator from the start of the school year to the end of the school year. The role of the parent coordinator is far from easy. It is a multiple hat job, but it's one I take with pride. I am the first and last face that my scholars see. I greet them with a good morning from Bruce, and I'll see you tomorrow from Bruce at dismissal time. The one thing that I have enjoyed the most is our cohort trainer courses and ropes and challenges. These courses help us parent coordinators learn how to properly engage and keep participants engaged in virtual meetings by being interactive. These activities can be used for all sorts of meetings, not just professional meetings. There are icebreakers, team games, and so much more. While engaging in these games and activities, I learned how they all kind of relate to my job. There's one that we call collaborative noticing. It's a Jamboard filled with pictures that we all can relate to. We have to choose a picture and talk about it. When I hosted this activity in one of our WIN sessions, a virtual meeting, I was able to get a better understanding of how people felt day to day or at that moment. My favorite activity from trainers is Sam Says. But since my name is Tammy, I kind of changed it up and called it Tam Says. In this activity, I will give instructions on what to do, how to do it, and keep adding more and more and more instructions before you can even conquer or master the first instruction. And that's kind of how our job is. We get more and more instructions, but we get it done. In this, oops, sorry about that. I've had multiple families ask about the activities and how I can help them learn. I've took these activities and I've taught a few teachers. I've worked with my principal on many of these. And thanks to Ms. Monica Lopez from our FACE team, she's been wonderful. Our PCs may feel that there is always something new to be done and not enough time in our day to wear the many hats that we wear. And that's exactly how the game goes. Prior to our cohort trainings, I was only getting about 2 to 3 family members to attend our virtual meetings. And since then, my parental involvement has increased from 2 to 3 families now to 15 to 20 families, which is a drastic change. And I couldn't be more happier. If you would like to learn about our cohort, you can always contact Ms. Monica Lopez from the FACE team. I have taken what I've learned and I've taught so many people so many new things. I would like to thank my regional Ms. Casey Masters, who also is setting up an in-person computer training for our PCs, which is the highlight of February. I'm looking forward to doing more in-person activities with my Bruce family and the parent coordinators. Also, thank you to Mr. Hall for all the support that he has given us. Now, with the support that he has given me, I'm able to feel comfortable in my role because, again, this is my first year being a parent coordinator, and it's made it a little bit easier for me. And these are just some of the things as a parent coordinator that is helping my school become successful. Thank you for your time, and I will now turn it back to Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Ms. Mimbers. Our next step for the 2022-23 school year is to identify more schools, increase the school's capacity to engage with the community and utilize other departments within the district. We want to make sure that we're intentional about family connection, identifying the barriers to effective family engagement, and develop strategies to increase family participation. We want to maximize virtual learning, the virtual learning experience, and provide creative opportunities for online learning and to increase technical skills across the district for all of our parent coordinators and staff. So we want to have a full implementation and starting in October 2022, continue to develop our parent coordinator to support ongoing family engagement and implement best practices and strategy along the way. So this concludes our report, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you for that. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments on this item?
Madam Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
Thank you. Any committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Director Leonard.
It's the second point regarding barriers that they have identified, and I'm just curious, I don't expect Mr. Hall to go over those barriers right now, but if at all possible, could we get like a abbreviated list of what you've discovered in this process, just what kind of barriers are impeding us having more success, even though I will say that I do literally see the numbers going up with more parent participation, but I'd like to get an idea of what challenges we still have to overcome.
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, we will be more than happy, Mr. Hall will be more than happy to provide that information to you prior to the full board meeting.
Thank you. Director Leonard, any follow-up? Good. Director Simpson.
Thank you. So Director Leonard, kind of that's sort of what I was wondering as well, as what kind of barriers are kind of in the way, but also I was just wondering about stability with this position. You know, you may not be able to answer that, but does it seem like people who come to these positions stay in them? Is there a high turnover, and what maybe that current vacancy rate is? So if you have any perspective on that now, you know, mostly that stability I was interested in. If not, you know, that could come to us later.
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, I can answer the first question regarding barrier. Some of our barriers that we know is clear, and that's working with technology and providing consistent communication to our families about what's available and how to access the workshops and the activities that are happening at the school. Our parent coordinators have been trained on how to utilize the virtual platform, such as Zoom and Google Meet, and in turn, training the other parent coordinator, and training family on how to better access and get connected with technology.
The other question that she said may be okay, Director Simpson, for the full board was the vacancy rate and the percentage or turnover within this position.
So Chair Taylor, members of the committee, we have a low vacancy rate. Right now, we support 134 schools, and we have 124 parent coordinators. Franklin Elementary had just hired a parent coordinator yesterday. So we are always continuously promoting the position of a parent coordinator and working with our school leader to get those vacancies filled.
All right, thank you. Director Simpson, any follow-up?
I know, thank you for that information. And I just want to thank Ms. Pbis for her part of the presentation tonight. It's always really nice to hear the perspective of our parent coordinators, and just this is such an important and vital piece of our school community. So thank you so much for that, for sharing that tonight.
Thank you. President Peterson, I saw your hand. Okay, it's still up. President Peterson.
Director Simpson asked the question, but I'll second the praise for both the general program and the program at Bruce. I really think that this has made a huge difference in our district over the last several years, and it seems to only be getting better. And so keep up the great work.
Thank you. Any other committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll just go really quick. I want to thank Ms. Pbis for coming. And as you said, you're new to this position, but not MPS. So thank you for staying with MPS. I love to hear that, and just the work that you're doing over there in the cohort. Being a formal parent coordinator, I think it was vitally important to get those individuals together to talk about other schools. So thank you all for the work that you're doing. This is a position that's so needed within our district, and I'm glad to see that it's continuing in an integral part of that parent and community piece. All right, seeing no other questions or comments, this is more informational only. Madam Chair, next item, please.
Item 2 is a report with possible action regarding discipline, disproportionality, and updates in progress. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Thank you. Administration.
The item before you this evening, on this evening's agenda, is our monthly report regarding disciplinarity updates to the progress. Mr. Matthew Boswell is here and for an overview of our progress and guiding us through, and he will guide us through the presentation. And upon completion of the presentation, we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
And before you go, Superintendent, I'm sorry, I just want to, because it may look different on the screen, and for our listening audience and for those individuals, we know this is one of the items that continues to be brought up. The OCR, MPS has met by that federal level the expectations of OCR, but because we want to continue to enhance and be better as a district, we will continue to work on the disciplinary disproportionate updates and progress going forward. So for other individuals who may be listening in and they think the name has changed, that name that we continue to use was not the right name to be talking about the progress that we're doing, because the OCR requirements through federal has been, the expectations has been met. But once again, because as a district, we know that we still have a lot of work that we must do, we will continue to update and work on this progress. So I don't want anyone to see it and think we're doing something differently. We will continue to work at this. It is just not OCR because that is the wrong name for it. So we want to make sure as we're going forward, we are speaking within the right name and we're still doing the work that has to be done, but we can no longer legally say OCR because that has closed. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but I wanted to make sure we made that clear. All right, Susan. All right, back to you, Superintendent.
Mr. Boswell.
Yeah, so first of all, good evening, Chair Taylor, members of the PACE Committee, Matthew Boswell, Senior Director of the Department of Student Services. I will take you through the monthly disproportionality updates and progress. So as always, we are stationed in our 5 priorities for success, which is to increase academic achievement, accountability, improve school and district, school and culture, love our staff, ensure fiscal responsibility, and strengthen communication and collaboration. Our reporting for the 2021-22 school year, as outlined, is to promote and provide resources to schools, work with schools to make certain counseling and supportive services are utilized, analyze and evaluate individual school data related to suspension, continuing to expand book studies, and form district committees to identify, to develop, and implement strategies to reduce suspension. Our updates from last month continued. The second session of our leads, the SSTs, continue. We utilize the above and below the line protocols to examine the racial content of the world around us and within our schools. We continue examination of themes from Monica Morris, push out, continue updates, continue aligning support to identify schools, begin conducting student focus groups, staff interviews, and observations that identify schools, continued examination of the code of conduct, terminology, application, and student supports, and classroom interventions. Resources for schools, prevention of alternatives to suspension, continue monthly updates to all discipline champions, highlighting microaggressions. Video overview of 5 universal supports with classroom management, including resource links with additional PD opportunities, and the NAACP webinar on banning our babies, addressing the suspension of Black children throughout early childhood education. We'll continue to ensure support services are utilized by meeting monthly with district disproportionality teams, create student focus group, question and protocols for root cause analysis at the identified schools that I mentioned earlier. Continue our work with school building intervention teams to match student data with students, identify for tier 2 and tier 3 interventions, and continued use of classroom redirection strategies with over 94,000 being recorded to date. Our suspension data for February of 2022, 2,734 students, incidents. In comparison to 2019-2020 year to date, we have 14,735. In comparison to 21-22 year to date, we have 13,217. As you see the breakdown by ethnicity. February alternatives to suspension. We had 155 incidents of conference that was used as alternative to suspension. We had 1,205 incidents of administrative counsel that prevented suspension. We had 76 incidents documented of detention, 67 of meditation, referral to BIT, we had 10, and repair and harm circle, we had 6, and restorative conferences, we had 14. All strategies used during the month of February to prevent suspensions. Continuing and expanded book studies, total of 2,635 staff in terms of courageous conversation, exploration, as we continue to have those meetings scheduled. Our leadership experience and administrative development series leads, second session with over 100 individuals in attendance. Our district equity leadership team, third session with courageous conversation about race. And continuing and expanded book studies, we talked about Push Out. School nurses viewed and discussed the documentary of Push Out, forming book cohort, Richard Euler's These Kids Are Out of Control, while we must reimage classroom management for equity to begin in March. District committees to reduce suspension continue. We have our citywide district committee beginning meeting, as we've had 3 sessions now. We have 2 more scheduled. Upon completion, of course, we will bring those recommendations to the full board for consideration of any changes related to our student code of conduct, root cause analysis, including different focus groups and staff members interviewed at different schools. So that's something that has been identified and will continue. Our next step, additional sessions of courageous conversations about race, exploration, leads, and DELP is scheduled and will take place. We will complete our citywide discipline committee and make formal recommendation to the board as mentioned, continue our root cause analysis at our identified schools, and continue to share monthly best practices on school and classroom climate with discipline champions. Additionally, we bring every month a department or school to highlight. Our school of highlight this month is 81st Street School. We have 81st Street School's wonderful principal here. I will give her the opportunity to introduce herself and take you through the presentation as we highlight the good work that is happening at 81st Street School.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Taylor and members of the committee. My name is Kiana DeRoja, and I'm the proud principal of 81st Street School. Just a little history about me. This is my 23rd year within the Milwaukee Public Schools as a teacher, as a special education supervisor for 14 school years, and then now coming into the ranks of building leader first year. A little bit about 81st Street School. We are a K-3 through 5th grade program. At 81st Street School, we offer our students a school-wide mindfulness program. We offer weekly specials, including physical education, library, art, music. We also are a school that receives AGR, the Achievement Gap Reduction Program, with staffing of a reading interventionist full-time within our building. Our focus is on personalized learning for students, and we also have a spectrum of autism programming at our school. We do participate in positive behavior intervention strategies known as Pbis at our school. We have educational field trips and learning journeys that our students have an opportunity to participate in. We have a CLC Boys and Girls Club to service our students for after-school programming. We have Spark Reading Program for our students, which services our students in K-5 through 3rd grade, adding additional tutoring services to the services already provided within the school. I'm so proud to be chosen to be our highlight for this month's meeting. So just a little bit about our school here. As you see on the slide, we have an enrollment of 340 students, and our students with disabilities are 29.1%. As we take a look at our discipline data, we're looking at the years of 2019 to 2020, and we're comparing it to the years of 2021-22, which is this current school year. As you'll see in yellow, the number of referrals that we had in 2019-2020 was 228 referrals for the school year. This year so far, we are at approximately 51 referrals. Our referrals have been for fighting, for chronic disruption, and disorderly conduct. But as you see, there's been about a 1/3 reduction in the total amount of referrals that we have been receiving at 81st Street School. Our suspensions at 81st Street School, you'll see that the total suspensions for 2019-2020 were 48 suspensions for students. This year so far, we do have suspensions of 16 suspensions. And as you see, those suspensions have been mainly for fighting at our school. In order to provide alternatives for suspension, we make sure that we try to use more restorative approach with our students. So it is our goal to build community with our students. So our teachers take time every morning during their morning meetings to take the time with each student to build that community. Parent involvement and communication is one of the main things that we've done this year at our school. In order to strengthen the relationships that we have with students and families, that causes our teachers to have to do more reaching out to the families instead of pushing kids towards office interventions, and we'll get towards that. It's been our goal this year to do more community service projects so that we can actually just repair the harm or having those conversations with students to get the students exhibiting different behaviors instead of the suspensions when we know the students want to go home and play Fortnite. So it's been a whole team effort, and I just want to send a special shout out to the teachers at 81st Street School for working with me. As a special education background, we've been practicing alternatives to suspensions throughout the work that I've done. So it was easy to kind of just get in. But I thank the staff at 81st Street School for working with me and what's best for our children as far as disciplinary removal. One of the major things that we've done differently at 81st Street School is work collaboratively with the staff members in development of our T-chart. And that really specifies what behaviors are office managed behaviors and what behaviors are classroom managed behaviors. What teacher interventions can they use? What consequences should they use for certain behaviors, and what those office interventions will be. So as you see on the next slide, this is our 81st Street School T-chart. You'll see that the minor behaviors are listed under teacher managed behaviors, the things that we'll see daily. The office managed behaviors are those more major behaviors that we'll have to address, through the code of conduct. And then we created this whole type of flow chart because the idea is that we want teachers reaching out to those parents instead of just sending students to office for intervention. What interventions have they tried in the classroom prior to that? And are those interventions documented? So you'll see at the bottom, if we continue to see these type of behaviors and the teacher has been providing those interventions and consequences, the question is, does the behavior continue to be chronic after various interventions and consequences? And have the interventions and consequences been documented in Infinite Campus? If yes, contact the office for support. If no, we encourage the teacher to continue with the teacher management of that. So the idea is getting the teachers to be able to manage the minor classroom behaviors within their classroom. At 81st Street School, we have our student positive pledge that our students recite daily. So we make this proclamation together as a staff, and I lead the students, or either we have some of our older students that lead this pledge. And I'm just gonna say it. I am somebody. I am capable and lovable. I am teachable, therefore I can learn. I can do anything when I try. I respect myself and others. I will be the best that I can be each day. I will not waste time because time is too valuable, and I am intelligent and wise. I work hard to achieve my goals. I'm in search of my destiny. I am somebody. And this is very important every morning in our morning announcements that either I'm leading the pledge or one of the students are leading the pledge. And we also use this as a positive behavior incentive for students because they want to be the ones that the other students hear on those announcements making this proclamation. And all students are standing and they're repeating after whoever the speaker is. So I believe that as we proclaim things, we have what we say, and our students believe it. It's posted on our walls in our schools. It's etched in the paintings on the wall. Each classroom has it highlighted. So this is a big part of the proclamation that we do to encourage students to believe in what they say and to promote positive behavior. With that, we do have PBIS school-wide when the goal is to be safe, respectful, and responsible. We are the Dolphins at 81st Street School, so we have our dolphin dues posted throughout the building, which is procedures for everything. Hallways, bathrooms, cafeterias, how do we behave when we're walking down the hallway, how is recess interest? So all of these things are posted within the area of the school just for that visual that the students need to be reminded. And we also practice these. At the beginning of the year, we're ready to learn. We taught these things. When it's time to come back at January semester, we reviewed these procedures and practice to make sure that the students are still meeting those expectations. At our school, we also have a Dolphin of the Week that each classroom shares one student from their class each week that's been safe, responsible, or respectful. And they go home with this little certificate and they take it to their parents, and they're very proud to be the Dolphin of the Week because their picture is posted in the main hallway on the TV for everybody to see. When you enter the building, you'll see who the Dolphins of the Week are for each classroom. Students get really excited about that. One thing that I'm excited about is the Pbis subcommittees that we created, because we want everybody to be working on Pbis in some capacity. And looking at the strengths of the different staff members in the building. Some are great at planning those events. Some are better at working with attendants or giving ideas for the social emotional learning or the morning meetings. We created a beautification committee and an adult culture committee and a cultural diversity committee. So there's space for every staff member to work. And having these separate committees, and then we meet once a month. I make sure that one of my staff meetings is devoted to Pbis specifically for subcommittees and Pbis so that teachers have time to do the work. And I believe this has been just what has changed the culture and the environment of our school. And just to make sure that the adults are happy, that adult culture committee, we have different grade levels providing lunches every month. We're getting together as staff, we're having conversations, we're planning events for students, but we're also making sure that the staff are happy. And if the staff are happy, I think the outcomes for students are much better. For BIT behavior, of course, we have our BIT teams where we have biweekly reviews of office discipline referrals, PLPs, and suspensions. And we do discuss as a team what the needs of the students are that come up. The ones that are being written up more often in the PLPs, what type of state groups do we need? We do have a 5th grade girls group, 4th grade boys group, based on what our data showed us from these students and what the office referrals and the PLP said. And we also have check-in and check-out for our students that need that, whether it's for behavior or attendance. As far as professional development, we've had sessions with John Jagman on a monthly basis, coming in to work with our school on anti-racism and working on the role of bias and discipline and helping us to engage multiple perspectives. So I'm just really glad because my team is so excited about this work that we're doing and that they're asking for more. They talked about book studies earlier. Upcoming book study we have, and we ordered this through one of our funds, our grant funds at our school. So all of our staff members will be receiving a copy of the book by Dr. Goldie Muhammad, Cultivating Genius, which is the work that administration led us in at the beginning of the school year, which unpacks the critical need for honoring students' identities and helping them to grow personally and academically. And as we work closely with our students and try to look at why or the reasons for certain behaviors, this will really help in reducing the behaviors of the students, because a lot of the behaviors were because I'm lower academically. So really just being able to pinpoint the reasons behind the behaviors and support students in a way other than just suspension. So we do a bunch of counseling at our school. We have peer mediation at our school. We have small groups. I do a whole bunch with families, like one-on-one with families, counseling, teacher meetings, whatever we can do to support our students, because we know the answer isn't in suspension. Of course, we have suspensions because there's some things that we may have to do for safety, but that is definitely not the first go-to at 81st Street School. And I'm proud of my staff for changing some of those referrals into that were more appropriate to be PLP notes. And I think that's what our concern was before. We weren't really using the PLP as appropriately as we should have. But now we're using that PLP to really document what we're seeing and put those interventions in place with the families involved as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes our monthly updates, and that also concludes our school highlight of the month. We just would like to thank 31st Street School, Principal Daraji, and her excellent leadership over there. As you see, she is moving the numbers in terms of discipline. Have some exciting things lined up as resources for kids, and also the engagement with her staff. So we just want to continue to bring school highlights of the month, just so the PACE committee can understand all the wonderful things that are happening at our schools, how hard our principals are working, how hard our teachers are working towards our overall mission and goal of reducing suspensions and making sure that it's disproportionate for all kids. So that concludes our presentation, and we can take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I would like to take questions or comments from the committee just in reference to the administrator that's here from 81st Street School, and then we'll go to the public comments. But I
So
want to
noted.
thank you. Director, Vice Chair O'Halloran, and then Director Simpson.
Thank you, Chair Taylor, and thank you for the presentation. So I wrote down 2 notes because my question was going to be, is there a specific policy that was changed, or if there was like a training module that you would attribute your success to? But I wrote down the PLP notes and then the Pbis subcommittee. I just like to ask this because sometimes we don't hear directly from the leadership like what the change was, and sometimes it's something that's quite simple. I think one of the principals said we established a zone where students could look at their phone, and then that set aside all these phone issues we were having in the classroom. So sometimes it's like a little change like that might not get disseminated to all of our leaders. So aside from the utilizing the PLP notes and the Pbis subcommittees, is there anything that you would like to shout out so that we should know or other leaders should know?
Administration.
Again, Chair Taylor and members of the committee, yes. This year, we've had the opportunity to really have time with more specials for our teachers to do grade level collaboration. So while they're working on the grade level planning and CABs for reading and math, they're also having conversations about kids in the same grade level. Teachers are working together as buddy teachers. So a lot of times the students don't make it down to the office because they have a colleague that they can lean on here and there. Also, every week I do Dolphin updates, which always has a Pbis positive behavioral strategy there for our teachers to see. We are still seeing some of the same behaviors there, but I think it's different because how I'm as a brand new principal, and like I said, having a special ed background, knowing that you had those 10 days of suspension, you had to be very careful with how you use those. And that's just my mindset. So when things come to me, I definitely look at the code of conduct, but if it's not serious and egregious and there's another way to deal with that, that's my philosophy. And teachers are getting on board. They're not just writing just referrals just because. And if they write a referral that's more appropriate to be a PLP note, I'll let them know, hello, this is more appropriate for a PLP note, and I send it to them in an email, and I will be, removing this as a referral. So just making sure that the documentation is in the right place. Because I think it was just excessive referrals before, and that was just kind of how things were done. But now under new leadership, that's not how things will be done.
Vice Chair O'Halloran, any follow-up, any other questions?
No, thank you for that, and thank you for the presentation and all your hard work.
Thank you. Director Simpson, and then after that, Director Leonard.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Yeah, just shout out to 81st Street School and the changes. Obviously, you're being very proactive with everything that you're doing. It's very intentional, from the positive message that the students are hearing about themselves every day, to the way that you've established the T-chart, and just your energy really shines through. And I also wanted to just compliment you as on the subcommittees that you have under Pbis. It's clear that you kind of see that as a real strength in your building and something that's moving you forward. So it just looks like you have a lot of things going on. I just want to thank you for your leadership this year and what you're doing to try to take positive steps forward for the staff and the students.
Thank you. Administration. Oh, okay.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, just wanted to say thank you for the compliments, and Mr. DeRosa will make sure that she shares all of those wonderful sentiments with her staff as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Simpson, any other questions or comments? Thank you. Director Leonard.
So Director O'Halloran actually took care of the first question I have, so that I actually appreciate that question. First of all, I just want to thank the principal and the staff and make sure that they hear thanks from the board, because I think it's so important to hear the good news of how we can make changes and hearing how it's being done. I think we need to lift ourselves up, because we know how challenging it is at MPS when it comes to the negative PR that we receive way too often. So you're doing a great job. Keep up the great work. I was a special ed teacher. I was going to ask you how you did that with nearly over 100 of your students are in special ed or have services. So you being a special ed teacher previously, I know you know the challenges of what they're like. So keep up the good work. I really don't have any questions, just thank you.
All right, thank you for Director Lander. And since it wasn't a question, it was another thank you and compliment. I also want to say thank you for the administrator from 81st Street comment and giving us details, because most of the time you hear how things change, but you stating about the POP and definitely about the PBIS. Being a formal employee, everybody is not set to do events, but finding a lane where they can be involved too, I think makes a difference. And then also when you stated, if the educators, and I call them all educators because I include like the paras and secretaries too, if the educators are feeling like they are worthy and they are getting assistance from the top down, then it does create a different environment for our babies. And I love hearing that. So if there are no more questions or comments for the administrator from 81st, let us say thank you again. And then Madam Chair, we'll go to the public comments.
So noted. The first person that we have on the platform to speak on this item is Gretchen Kapperman. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Madam Chair.
Gretchen Kapperman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Kapperman.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Taylor and members of the board. I am testifying as a member of Anti-Racist White Educators Milwaukee. We have been working in coalition with Black Educators Caucus, Leaders Igniting Transformation, and MICA for at least a year to draw attention to the abhorrent disproportionate discipline of our Black students. This work was spearheaded by MICA in coalition 3 years ago. Our outcomes are unchanged and our practices are not serving Black students. Why haven't you as board members directed administration to come up with creative ideas to get at the root cause of behavioral issues? Administration reports that there are ongoing listening sessions with students. However, in report after report, they describe suggestions from students that are vague. Where is the action on what students are saying needs to change? If there have been ongoing discussions with students, then their recommendations should be acted upon. If there isn't evidence of student voice being incorporated into larger solutions, why would students feel compelled to keep sharing their thoughts? The disproportionality reports have not changed much since the OCR resolution started. At the same time, the administration continues to report on the same practices that lead to the same outcomes each PACE meeting. It makes me wonder where the complacency is coming from. Board members of the PACE committee, please hold MPS administration accountable for the lack of change in our general disproportionate discipline numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker that we have on the platform is Ray Chappelle. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Ray Chappelle, representing RE Milwaukee, CHAPPELLE.
Thank you.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, while I am relatively new to providing testimony, I can only imagine that the concerned community members and staff who have called in month after month for the last 7 years must think that these PACE committee meetings are like the worst kind of deja vu. 4 years ago, when I was student teaching at Allen Field, my cooperating teacher invited me to sit in during a staff meeting. We just so happened to briefly discuss the discipline disproportionality. I was handed a packet of paper full of graphs and tables and charts, all illustrating the disproportionate discipline data in our district and at our school. My eyes immediately found 2 pie charts. One showed that 50% of students enrolled in our district were Black. The other vividly demonstrated the effects of systemic racism in our schools. 80% of the suspensions given out around the district were handed down to Black students. These were the same statistics that attracted the attention of the Office of Civil Rights back in the 2014-2015 school year. And now in 2022, what has changed? Sure, we have approached this issue from different angles: community listening sessions, book studies, discipline champions. But what results have been yielded? Are we satisfied with this data? Members of the PACE committee and the school board at large, how have you held district administrators accountable for coming up with creative ideas that get to the root cause of this disparity? The white board members on this committee claim to be champions of restorative practices, former educators dedicated to anti-racism, and warriors of social justice. But where is the proof of that fiery disposition when you pat administration on the back for mediocrity and incremental change month after month? Quite a few of you are up for re-election next year. This is your chance to do the right thing and create the systemic change needed to uproot the decay in our district. This is your chance to live up to the lofty descriptors that you have chosen for yourselves and have published on your public board member pages. Otherwise, you will all be described and remembered the same way these PACE committee meetings have been: performative.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that completes public testimony, and the item is back with the committee.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Any committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Director Leonard.
Yeah, I do have some questions. First of all, I sort of like mirror a little bit. I think Chairperson Taylor, I think you explain why the name has changed and what's going on with that. I'm not sure how we've met the OCR requirements. I'm assuming by the actions, but not by the numbers. And it does bother me. I have to be careful of my comments because I have my own ideas, having taught for 28 years, and I sometimes clearly understand why we have this level of disproportionality. But I will have to hold myself back on that one. What I will do is ask some questions. Is there any kind of duplicative reporting on the OCR reports? I'm looking at, when I see, like, for example, substantial environmental disruptions, and then I see another category, disorderly conduct. I'm just sort of asking a technical question there to make sure that we are being very careful on what we're actually reporting. And I also have been looking at the details. So there's clearly, and this is nothing new, but when I do look at the metrics, I'm seeing that our greatest challenges come with sort of a sort of a clear correlation in my mind. I'll say it that way. But when I look at 8th and 9th grade especially, but 7th and 9th grade, 10th grade to a certain extent, highest rate of suspensions, highest rate of behavior incidences. And then there's a drop off when they get into that second year of high school, significant drop off. I also look at classroom sizes. I've been looking at classroom sizes in different buildings to see if there's a correlation. It does seem that there is a type of correlation, and you have to be very careful with that. There's no proof to that. I can't substantially say this is why, but I do have a strong belief that when you're packing a lot of students in a classroom, too many students, in my opinion, you're going to have more behavioral problems. There's going to be more interactions, more situations where this can occur. And I think that's part of the problem. I'm not saying that's the whole problem. I'm saying that's part of the problem. That's more of a comment on my part. And then I'll just leave it at that. Those two questions, and answer as you can.
Well, administration, I know Director Leonard has some questions, but because of the name change, I would like administration to explain that with the OCR, because this was something that took place before many of us, probably all of us, were on the board. And so they can explain the kind of backlog of the OCR in the name, just so that we're clear also for the PACE committee and as well as those individuals listening or watching.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, John Jagman, District Discipline Manager. So correct, the original OCR resolution we received from Office of Civil Rights had certain dates of submission of data and action steps. The last submission of that data and those action steps was July 1st, 2020. Since that date, we have considered it sunsetted because we are no longer submitting anything per the resolution. We are continuing with those direct action steps within the resolution, but we have not heard back from Office of Civil Rights in any manner since our last submission on July 1st, 2020.
All right. Now, thank you. Now, if you can answer Director Leonard's questions.
Yes. Chair Taylor, members of the committee, John Jagman, and if I missed one of them, Director Leonard, please let me know. But in terms of duplicative reporting on our report here, within a discipline referral, it can get a little tricky because there can be multiple events. A student could leave the classroom, could get into a fight, could also break a window, and that could be 3 events. So all of these are individual events, but it may add up to a smaller number of referrals. But none of these are duplicative in nature, but again, there could be multiple events captured on one referral. There could also be multiple students. There could be an incident involving 4 students getting into altercation. That would be indicated on here as 4 events, even though you might consider that one situation, if you will. And then also in terms of grade level, we have seen those same trends along grade level for the past years. That was one of the metrics we did report to Office of Civil Rights during those years. Also, one of the metrics that was reported out was the class size, and it does get tricky because there are other factors that go into it, but across the district, there is no direct correlation of class size to discipline, but looking at within specific schools and with specific subgroups, there can be those natures. But a lot of what you're sharing, I don't really have an answer per se, but we are looking at some of those same trends across the district.
Director Leonard, any other follow-up or any questions or comments for this item?
I just wanted to make sure you get clarity. And I sort of know this because I've worked with MPS for a long time, so I understand that. But in essence, when we see events, that does not always relate to numbers of people, if I understand that correctly. I guess, and I know that you're not reporting that number, but for 1,000 events, how many actual students were involved with that behavior those incidents and or suspensions? So my assumption is that the number of actual people is much less than the actual number of events per se. Now, I might be wrong, but if you could at least clarify that with me, appreciate that.
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, your assumption is correct. The actual number of students would be lower. The actual number of referral or occurrences of a behavior also going to be lower because many of those have captured multiple students or multiple events where a student has 3 or 4 events within it. So yeah, both those assumptions you said out loud would be correct.
All right, Director Leonard, you're good. Thank you. Director Simpson.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. So one of the speakers kind of got to my question. I was looking at the slide where it talks about the different ways behaviors are handled, conferences, administrative council, and, some of those have been around a long time, and the newer ones, kind of are at the bottom of that chart. I think we've kind of talked about this before, and so I just have 2 questions related to that. So, one, what are we doing to increase the use of mediation, repairing harm circles, restorative conferences? And I know we know some of this, but if we could just talk about that, that would be great. And sort of related to that then, when we have our students engaged in conversations about discipline at the school level, are there, and those notes are recorded, are there, trends in what students are asking for within their building? Like, are they saying we want restorative practices used more, or we want peer mediation used more? What are we hearing from students in terms of what they see as the most beneficial to them?
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee. So first, with those alternatives to suspensions that you spoke about, I'll use a couple of those on the bottom. Some of it is making sure that administrators, they're the ones that making those decisions, are aware of documenting it. So referral to BIT, we have 10. We had more than 10 students receive an intervention through the BIT in the month. We know that because that's another data point. So part of it is ensuring that administrators know that that is an appropriate place to document that is occurring so it can be captured. It is also for alternatives to suspension when that referral has been put in. So I'll use restorative conference as an example. We have 14 here documented. Again, that's by administrators who are using that as part of the discipline process. But if you go to the page prior, where we look at those classroom interventions, we have a lot higher number of restorative conversations occurring, which is showing that we have a lot of staff members that are using that practice prior to the discipline. So two things are at play there, making sure administrators know that that's an appropriate place to document when they're doing it, and also understanding that we have a lot of these taking place prior to the discipline occurring. And then when we look at some of the trends for students, I don't want to go too deep into it. We've only been at 3 of the schools, and we're still in the process of processing and making trends. But for example, one that came up that discipline disproportionality leadership team spoke about was students are looking at opportunities for them to engage with staff members and their peers in a more of a personal relationship building manner. Like they all recognize, many of them recognize their favorite thing about school was the teachers, but they all recognize that they have those relationships, but they're looking at more opportunities to engage with each other throughout the school day. Some students even brought up, if I'm having a bad day, what's the avenue for me to kind of reach out to one of those adults or a peer? Maybe, a freshman reaches out to an upperclassman if those relationships are made for those opportunities. So we are investigating ways that we can ensure that staff members are aware that students are saying they like the relationships with their staff, but we need to create more opportunities for them to have that connection.
Director any follow-up comment on
Yes,
that?
thank you. So first of all, that's great that they're asking, to reach out and speak with their peers or another staff member. And I think that may actually speak to what Director Leonard brought up. I think at the elementary level, there are more opportunities for students to kind of engage with one another. I think at the middle school level, there's more movement. It's a little more fragmented. So those conversations might be a little more difficult to have. And then sort of part of that then, are we looking at any specific strategies to target that bubble that we see with that middle school age group?
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, John Jagman, District Discipline Manager. So this is the first step to that process, is to talk to the students, and we have all the data points from these schools and really get into the root cause. But all of the data that you guys have identified, we are seeing that is a big focus area. And these schools we've identified are all middle and high school. So we are kind of honed in on that 6th to 10th grade. So once we fully process it, we've got members of a wide variety of district departments that are part of that work, going out to the schools, processing it. Then I would think we will be comfortable kind of moving forward with what those next steps look like, but we're still in the looking at it process.
Okay. Director Simpson.
I just thank you very much for that information.
Thank you. Vice Chair O'Halloran.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I have 2 questions. One around the Code of Conduct review. So I know that we'll have some recommendations coming back for the committee and the board to consider. Just in general, through this work, I know this has been over the process of a year, and so the work isn't going to necessarily impact the numbers at the moment, and it would be something planning for the future. Do you think that the recommendations will improve the overall discipline approach, or will it improve the disproportionality? Because it seems like some of our reporting like we'll talk about how there's 1,000 fewer referrals or whatever. And it's good to have fewer referrals, but I think some of the hangups that we hear, or not hangups, but some of the issues that are identified from the testimony is not just the overall numbers, but the specific disproportionality. So do you think with the recommendations for the Code of Conduct that we would see, do you think that would improve the numbers of overall issues, or do you think it would get to the specifics of disproportionality?
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, Actually, research shows that one of the primary areas of disproportionality is the subjective language and the misinterpretation of language. So I actually fully do believe, done correctly and implemented, looking at the language within the code of conduct can address disproportionality. We do see some subjective language in the code of conduct, and unfortunately, due to the biases that we all have subconsciously, our code of conduct can be applied differently to a white student versus a Black student. So as we continue to look at the language and ensure that all staff members are aware of the language changes and it's implemented, it definitely can affect our disproportionality.
Vice Chair O'Halloran, any other comments, questions, or follow-up for this?
Yes, thank you. That's good to hear because I really thought it would just be like an overall review that would bring down our overall numbers, but I'm glad to hear that it would get to that disproportionality. Then my next question is, do you have plans to set specific goals on disproportionality for the upcoming year? Now that we have quote unquote the new normal, we have a year back in the classroom post-pandemic, more or less, or current pandemic, depending on how you view it. But we've been back in the classroom now. So we would have kind of this year as like our new normal. Do you have goals in mind for next year and that we would be able to come back and say, okay, so we've implemented these and with these changes, we would think that we'll see this growth. Does that make sense?
Administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, currently the district is starting to plan for next school year, and that work is embedded in the district improvement plan, the school improvement plan, the DIP and the SIP are the acronyms you may have heard. So I'm not sure where those exact numbers are going to land, but part of that conversation, there's always been, right now, it's goal 7 within the district improvement plan is looking at discipline disproportionality. Going forward, it's also going to be a big part of one of the goals within there. We can work with that committee. We're part of that team that's looking at creating that DIP. And get what that exact goal will be, but it's going to be right embedded within the district improvement plan, which is then the school improvement plan.
Chair Taylor and members of the committee, also, this is the first full year that we have had back, so this will be a baseline type of year for goals when we set goals, because what we have been looking back at the 1920 school year, now we have a baseline that we can set. Also, just like to add, we talked about the 6th through 12th grade, those students and the support that's needed there and the data trends that we're seeing. We also have the Black and Latino male office working with manhood academies and things of that nature out into schools, doing some things to support those grade levels as well, to also help to the disproportionality piece and to cut in on those suspensions, along with how restorative practices and restorative circles have been able to support us through that, as well as the equity work. And then also knowing now the new office, the gender identity office, is also wrapping that same supportive safety nets around that group of students as well to try to move that. But yes, this would be an anchor year for baseline data so that we will be able to have something to compare from one year to the next.
Vice Chair O'Halloran.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee members have any questions or comments on this item? All right, seeing none, Madam Secretary, this was for informational purposes only. Can you go to the next item, please?
The next item is item number 3, a report with possible action on services provided to students with disabilities in the least restrictive environments, the LRE report. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Administration on this item?
Yes, Chair Taylor and members of the committee, the item before you on this evening's agenda is a report on services provided to students with disabilities in the least restricted environment, LRE. Travis Pinter will provide an overview of this report and guide us through the presentation. Upon completion, we will be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Mr. Pinter.
Thank you. Chair Taylor, members of the committee, Travis Pinter, Senior Director of Specialized Services. LRE, or least restrictive environment, is really one of the fundamental principles of special education. Our students with disabilities should spend the maximum amount of time possible with non-disabled peers. And that's what's represented in the data that we're looking at tonight. I should also point out, as you look into the school data, that students with disabilities that are currently attending our virtual school will not appear separately. In case you're looking for that group, they are still listed in their subsets within the schools are actually were pulled from for MVP. Okay. For indicator 5, which is what we're talking about, LRE is expressed really through 3 different metrics. And I want to draw your attention to the summary of that in the LRE report for March. That's attachment number 1. Under number 5, which is page 1-2, there's a table there I think is a nice summation of that. And of course, we have 5A, B, and C. 5A are the percent of students ages 6 through 21 with IEPs that are served in the regular ed classroom 80% or more of the time. Our target threshold for that is to stay at above 70%. 5B, ages 6 through 21 students with IEPs serve in the regular ed classroom 40% or less. And our threshold for that is to stay below 7.9%. And then C, our percentage of students with IEPs, again, 6 through 21, who are served in residential facilities, home and hospital, in other words, outside services. And our target threshold is to stay below 0.95%. So just a refresher on that as you're looking at that table. And you'll notice, particularly when comparing the start of the year, say in September of 21, you look across that line to the February numbers, that we are moving in the right direction in all 3 metrics. We continue to stay well above 5A and well below 5C. And 5B, for the first time here, is dipped below 15%. So if you look at that comparison, especially from start of the year to now, that's good to see movement in all 3 directions. I would attribute that the positive impact on those numbers to a variety of things. One of them is our staff virtual Saturdays that we've been providing for staff to work extra time on their IEPs and their IEP work and their caseload work. I think that's allowed them to do extra kind of evaluation of where their students are and what time they're spending in the regular environment as well. Some of the trainings we've included on those Saturdays are around the alternate curriculum in particular. That's really relevant here because of our bridging units, which I know we've talked about before. Our students spending more time in the regular environment, and particularly a different metric that's not represented here, but our 1% metric from DPI, which is that we're really striving to have no more than 1% of our students in the alternate curriculum. And that number was as high as almost 4% several years ago, and we're now real close to that 1%. And that's through a lot of that work as well. And I think that's reflected here across A, B, and C. That's all I have to speak specifically on that, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments on this item?
Madam Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
Thank you. Any committee members have any questions or comments on this item? All right, Sienna, I would like to just ask, are we in compliance with our IEP?
Director Taylor, members of the committee, we are currently in compliance with our IEPs with students in terms of their receiving of services and additional services. We have over 7,000 IEPs in process. And in fact, we are going through right now, we used to call March Madness. We're going through our validation process with DPI, and the early report in the first couple of days has been extremely positive from DPI. They were very complimentary in a meeting I was in yesterday around looking through our IEPs, looking at our compliance, and it just had nothing but positive things to say about it. And so we're real happy about that.
All right, it's always great to hear that we're in compliance and doing what we should. Once again, I don't see any other questions or comments. Well, Director Simpson.
As long as we're being positive, I will just give a general compliment to the staff because, from our paraprofessionals to the special education teachers to the regular education teachers, that takes a lot of collaboration in order to make that, the least restrictive environment work for our kids. So I just want to give a shout out to everybody who is working in our schools with our kids every day to make sure that our special education students are getting the best possible services that they can in, a healthy environment for them and for the other kids who are with them. So just a shout out.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, seeing no other questions or comments on this item, Madam Secretary, I believe that was the last item on this agenda for tonight.
You are correct.
So thank you all for tuning in. Be safe, love on somebody, have a great day, but remember self-care. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Meeting adjourned.
Happy International Women's Day.
Yeah, happy International Women's Day. I can't forget that.
Yes.
One of the great women that's on here tonight too. Thank you.
Yes.